Steve here. It's the show where I answer your questions, and this week's first question comes from Ahoyerno, who said, reading garbage like The Magic Man in the Sky or watching shit like Birth of a Nation. When do you do that? Do you schedule a viewing block between 9 and 5, or do you watch it together with Ashley after dinner? Do you skip another book in favor of William Craig? Do you pass Sherlock Jr. in favor of Pretty Woman? I assume this is your flavor of sadomasochism, and I truly enjoy it for what it's worth. I fake it. I don't actually read or watch any of that shit. Kidding! I'm kidding. Of course I watch it. I'm not a fraud. Actually, for the movies that we review on Late Seating, I usually watch them with Ashley most of the time. The night before we record, or sometime the day before we record the podcast, we sit down. Ashley and I sit down when we watch the movies together, and then we talk about the movies afterwards, which often helps me a great deal in formulating my own thoughts about the movie, even if it's a movie that I've seen before. It gives me, something different or interesting to say about the movie, hopefully during the podcast. And the apologetics books, I read them the day before I record that week's video, and that is during the workday. That's like a 9 to 5 thing. But the movies for Late Seating, those are usually, we Jason and I record Late Seating on Sundays, so I'll usually watch the movie on a Saturday, and it's usually fun. I mean, even if it's a shitty movie, watching shitty movies is fun if you do it in the right mindset, and if you do it with a person who can share your appreciation for it and join you in making fun of it, and and I'm fortunate to have that. So yeah, it doesn't really eat into my personal time or my ability to enjoy other things. I still have time to watch other movies that I really enjoy. If the Late Seating movie that week is a really terrible movie, and to read other stuff. I mean, it doesn't really cut into my valuable reading or movie watching time. Francois Lacombe, the discussion about Grand Moff Tarkin made me think about Carrie Fisher's demise. She had completed shooting her scenes for the upcoming Episode 8, so Princess Leia will appear as intended in that movie. But do you think they will resurrect Carrie with CGI just long enough to give her character's arc a proper closure in Episode 9? Would it be appropriate to do so? Well, whether or not it would be appropriate, I suppose, is a matter of opinion. I personally would be kind of uncomfortable with that, given that it would still be so recent after her death. I mean, people need to realize, some of us are kind of weirded out about the Peter Cushing CGI resurrection for Grand Moff Tarkin in Rogue One, and he's been dead since, 1994? And when Episode 9 comes out, that'll be, 2 years from now? 3 years from now? So it'll be only a few years since the death of Carrie Fisher. And when that new movie comes out, those, that grief and those sad memories of her premature death will come flooding back to a lot of Star Wars fans. So I think it would be kind of a tough pill to swallow if they did a CGI resurrection of Princess Leia by putting Carrie Fisher's image in the movie, using digital technology. To me, the best way to handle it would be to either write Leia off screen, give her something to do off screen that will explain why she's absent, but leave the character alive, let the character live on, beyond the frame, or kill the character off. Give her a death that is a definitive end for the character to explain why future Star Wars films will not feature her. I really think any of those options would be preferable to the CGI resurrection of an actor who died so recently and is tied so closely to such a beloved character in the series. There's no good way to go, but I think a CGI resurrection probably is not the best way to handle it. Bruce Bartup, Steve, another small problem. After Christmas, it's violence and a serious tone as we look forward to the inevitable monumental catastrophe/extinction event that is a Trump presidency. The Dam Busters, scheduled today, UK ITV 2 p.m., is very powerful, extremely violent, extremely persuasive, iconic even, and propaganda. As we all know, it is very heavily referenced in Star Wars. Undergunned elite flyers bomb the crap out of overwhelmingly strong enemy in a chain reaction involving a lot of high-speed, low-flying, and servo-mounted guns. Ding-a-ling? so I have to stop enjoying it. Damn busters, I mean. Your thoughts? Can we still watch Star Wars with internal critics switched off? Or will feeling the Force lead us to Clone Wars race riots and nuking the Islamic world? Casualty list of Trump's presidency. Number 1, fun or naivete. It's still my innocence, and I hadn't quite finished with it yet. Fuck that guy. I understand your concern, and I do think that there will probably be things in our popular culture, beloved films, beloved TV shows, etc., that we will be able to enjoy less because of a Trump presidency, because they have themes or stories that are sort of uncomfortably familiar to our current real-life situation. I don't know if Dam Busters is one of those. I mean, yeah, you're right. Dam Busters is certainly sort of patriotic, and I think you could even call it propaganda. I mean, it is very much a pro-West, pro-ally, pro-British sort of, rah-rah movie. But, the pilots in Dam Busters are attacking fascism. Star Wars is the same way. Star Wars is, and hopefully always will be a story of rebels resisting fascism. I think that's a good thing. I think that's not something we need to necessarily hide ourselves from. But you did also say that, you're sad that you can't just enjoy it as a fun movie anymore. Maybe you don't want it to be an anti-fascism piece. Maybe you just want to watch a fun, exciting adventure movie. And yeah, if that is the case, and unfortunately maybe for a lot of us that's not an option anymore. And yeah, you're right, that does suck. That happens a lot. It's not unique to just the Trump situation. There are many times when real life sort of intrudes and affects our enjoyment of our art. And this is definitely one of those times for a lot of us, and that's unfortunate. It's sad. But hopefully we can at least take some inspiration from the art, even if we can't enjoy it as much as we would like to as just innocuous, frivolous entertainment. At least if we do have to take it seriously, we can take it seriously in the right way and use it as inspiration for the right things. Matt Helmers, you said what your disagreement with some feminists was, but you never said which side of the issue you fall on. Do you lean towards sex-positive feminism or sex-negative? I have strong feelings on this topic. My best friend growing up had a family-run brothel in New Orleans. His grandmother and aunt ran it, so it was run entirely by women. I can assure you from my experience that there wasn't anything positive or empowering about that occupation for the girls. They were often very young and were asked to sleep with the richest bidder. After a few days, the girls would be shipped down to another brothel in another town like products. I lean very strongly against the sex industry, but I also feel like it isn't my place to give my opinion. And what you described there is awful, is exactly the sort of exploitation that I think we need to strike against and we need to avoid. We need to set up a system where that kind of exploitation, where sex workers being shipped back and forth like product, is something that is not allowed to happen. And if you're in an environment where the whole process is illicit, where there's no legal oversight of any of it because everybody is operating illegally, and the sex workers who are being exploited by the brothel owners in this case don't have any recourse. They can't. They're afraid to go to the authorities because what they're doing is illegal too. So they can't just call the cops and say, hey, the owner of my brothel is exploiting me and treating us like slaves, because what they're doing is illegal too. Whereas if you create an environment where it's decriminalized and there is government regulation and there is government oversight and such an abuse takes place where prostitutes are being shipped back and forth from one brothel to the other like cattle, there is at least some hope, some mechanism for recourse. You can call the police, you can call the government, you can call whatever office has been set up to provide oversight for this industry, and you can say, hey, this is something bad going on and we need you to do something about it, and then the government can step in and do something about it. I've been persuaded that that is a much better way of handling the situation, particularly from the perspective of wanting to protect the rights and the autonomy of the sex workers, and of wanting them to be able to be in a situation where they are free and they're empowered and they are safe. in that line of work. I think that a better way of doing it is to legalize it and to allow government oversight of it rather than to ban the entire industry and force it all underground where exploitation can take place much easier. Adam Rainstopper, is 2017 going to be the year that you answer the question I have been asking for the last 4 episodes? It will be the year of Donald fucking Trump having his hand on the button. It will be the year that a creationist is in charge of the Department of Education, and another is the Surgeon General, an oil baron in charge of the Department of the Interior, and another at the Department of Energy, and a Treasury Secretary from Goldman Sachs. So I will ask you one more time, and then I'll figure you don't want to answer this. Is it time for the left to employ more radical tactics than just protesting and blogging and YouTube videos and hashtags? Oh, and you forgot the Wall Street lawyer who is going to run the SEC. That's a nice addition as well that came about, I think, after you posted your question. It's a good question, and I do think it's something that the left, that those of us who want to protest Trump and resist Trump are going to have to think about. We're going to have to do more than just blog about it and make videos about it. I don't think violence is the answer. I know that sort of always comes up when people say maybe we need to consider more extreme methods. People always think, oh God, violence. They're gonna become terrorists, and that's not the answer. I don't condone that. I don't recommend that. For one thing, violence in and of itself is just a bad idea. It's just not something that people should do. It should not be acceptable in society. You look at something like what happened a few days ago in Chicago, where this disabled man was apparently abducted by 4 people and was physically and verbally assaulted and abused while his attackers were like yelling anti-Trump stuff at him, and he was a white person and his attackers appeared to be black, and they were yelling at him for being white and insulting him based on him being white. And that sort of thing. Not only is that act or those acts contemptible and worthy of condemnation and just absolutely unacceptable on their own, just in their own right. That's the sort of thing that just should never ever happen. And the people who did it should be prosecuted and punished to the full extent of the law. It's also counterproductive. If indeed it was intended as some kind of political act by the people who did that, it's utterly self-defeating. It doesn't work. But there are other methods that do not require violence from the people who employ them that I think we need to start considering using on a much larger scale. Methods of physical resistance, like holding protests that are actually disruptive to the communities where they're held. Like it's great to hold an organized rally in a pre-selected area, but sometimes that's not enough. Maybe you need to take to the streets. Maybe you need to stop traffic. Maybe you need to disrupt public events. Doing sit-ins like the NAACP did in Jeff Sessions' office this week. That sort of thing, I think in the past has been proven effective if done consistently enough and if done long enough. Yeah, I think the left needs to definitely embrace those sorts of methods. And I think we're getting to the point now, as the Trump presidency continues to take shape and looks to be every bit as horrifying as we were afraid it would be, where we're not going to have any choice. We're going to have to start doing stuff like this because we have given away our power politically. We have given away our power in the legislature. We have allowed the right to take that away from us to enough of an extent that we no longer, the Democrats, even if the Democrats do show themselves to have some backbone and do whatever they can to block these measures, there simply aren't enough of them there anymore. It's going to take more than just hoping that they vote the right way. It's going to take civil disobedience to prevent some of these things from happening. We're just not going to have a choice anymore. NYC Guy. Hello again, Steve. I have more questions. Some political commentators say Donald Trump's rise was a reactionary response to the politics of political correctness. Some voices on the right wing say they are tired of being called racists and sexists by so-called social justice warriors. These same people voted for Donald Trump, who used racism and sexism to win the presidential election. Don't they understand? They just gave a lot more legitimacy to the very forces they claim to oppose. No, I don't think that they understand that. And I don't think that they actually oppose those forces. They may say they do. They may sincerely believe that they do. But if they voted for Donald Trump, they don't. I don't really see how it's any more complicated than that. If you claim to be opposed to racism and opposed to sexism and opposed to religious bigotry and opposed to unjust discrimination and you voted for Donald Trump, then you're not actually opposed to any of those things. And if indeed the rise of Donald Trump is a reaction to racists being called racists, if indeed the reaction of that portion of the electorate to being called out for their racism and their sexism was to vote for the most blatantly racist, sexist candidate in my lifetime, in the lifetime of anyone probably watching this video, then that says something pretty fucked up about our society, doesn't it? I mean, the implication is, well, you need to stop calling them racist because look what happens when we do. I've said before, I think all of us are culpable to some extent because we have all enabled or at least passively condoned the normalization of Trump and of the attitudes and ideas that he embodies. It's all of our fault to an extent. But the people who voted for him are the most directly responsible for the rise of Trump. And when those people complain about being called racist, about being called sexist, just because they voted for a racist, sexist person to be president of the United States, I'm sorry. I do not give a shit. The only words I want to hear from you are, I'm sorry. Not, don't call me a racist. Fuck you. And next time you have a chance to vote, vote for someone better than him. Vote for someone who will not attempt to use the power of government to brutalize and oppress people and rob them of their rights. Do that instead of pouting about being called racists for voting for and supporting fucking racism. Fuck you. Good question, NYC guy. Becca Hawkins. Hi, Steve. Josh McDowell's son, Sean McDowell, has served as general editor recently for a book that came out earlier this year called A New Kind of Apologist. Many different apologists wrote contributing chapters in this book. McDowell writes the following in his introduction to the book, quote, apologists today must do their homework. We must critically examine our arguments and read both sides of every issue. We must know what we are talking about and do proper research to back up our claims. This younger generation has been raised with endless information in the palm of their hands, and they frequently check the veracity of what they hear. If we make a claim that is not true, our credibility will go out the window. Apologists today must do the hard work of learning a discipline and presenting the truth fairly and accurately. In this same book, a contributing author railing against transgender people cites an out-of-date study from the 70s and one study having nothing at all to do with transgender issues, as well as a bunch of sensational news articles and opinion pieces. I also find it interesting that this quote says that apologists today must do their homework, as though they didn't have to in past decades. What are your thoughts? Well, it sounds about right to me. It sounds perfectly in line with all the apologists that I have read in the past. And the truth is, if they really did their research and they really did learn the disciplines that they are drawing from, or if they treated apologetics as a proper discipline and held themselves to rules of research and history and scientific investigation, then apologetics would not exist. Because the entire enterprise is based on deception and ignorance and assuming the ignorance of your audience. And for apologists to say, now you got to make sure you cite your sources from now on, I mean, you know, that's because they've been forced to do that. They never used to do that before because they didn't have to. They were just doing the same thing that pastors do in churches every Sunday. Just leave out all of the information that might undermine the story that they're telling and just trust that the Christians in the audience will be trusting, will believe them because they're preaching at them from a position of authority. So if they're saying now, oh, hey, we better make sure we get our facts straight, if they really got their facts straight, they wouldn't have a job. There would be no such thing as religious apologetics because the whole thing is based on twisting facts, not getting them straight. Here's one thing I don't want to get twisted, and that's terrible. I apologize. Segues, as you can tell, have not gotten any better since the slight changes in format and setting. So I'm just going to go ahead and say, you know what? That's the end of the first part of the video. It's time for the second part of the video, which is a little something I like to call
the lightning round.
In Garward Shirase, I know you said you're unlikely to watch a new DC movie, but what are your thoughts on the Lego Batman movie? Are you planning to watch it? Yeah, I think I'll probably see it at some point. I don't think I'll see it when it comes out in the theaters, but the trailers do make it look really funny, and I'll probably end up watching it when it comes out, like on Amazon Video or Netflix or something. I do really want to see it. Lucas Hackett, One Angry Brony. Hey Steve, which one of these sounds better to you? Seeing a dream match between Hulk Hogan and John Cena? Spending a month being stranded in an island with Alex Jones? Or having to ride carpool with Buster Bunny, Plucky Duck, and Hampton Pig, in a car with both of them hammered on beer. Nice Tiny Toons reference there. I like that. I always preferred Animaniacs. I thought Animaniacs was like they actually figured out a way to make it funny, as opposed to Tiny Toons, which were just sort of like, oh, that's nice. Of the three, I definitely got to go with the Hogan Cena dream match. I'm not a huge fan of Hulk Hogan as a wrestler, and I'm not a fan of him at all as a person, but when in the ring with a decent worker, he could be carried to an okay match, and I think Cena could get a good match out of him. Maybe not today, but maybe if it's a dream match and when he was in his prime, I think Hogan and Cena would have been pretty damn good. So I'm going to go with that. And Cena goes over, of course. Corey Donaldson, lightning round question. Do you ever feel like mouthing off to every unpleasant person you come across? No, not really. I mean, do I ever feel that way? Yeah, sure, sometimes, but not often. It's just a waste of time, to start shit with people or to respond to people who are trying so desperately to start shit with you. I mean, if someone's being unpleasant to you specifically, especially through the internet, I found the best way to respond is just to not to respond, because all they want is your attention. They're jumping up and down and waving their arms and holding their breath trying to get your attention. And if you just ignore them, then you don't give them that attention and you treat them how they deserve to be treated, which is like nothing, because that's what they are. They're just pathetic little piss ants screaming for attention. Hey, look at me, look at me. I'm going to be such a big jerk that you're going to have to pay attention to me. No, that's okay. That's my preferred attitude. I don't always live that out, but that's my preferred attitude. Kevin Logan, I'm glad to hear that your favorite, note the correct spelling, founding father is an Englishman. Are there any other acts of historical treason you engage in? Any other foreigners who had an influence on America that you particularly admire? Lafayette! Lafayette! Lafayette. Jeffrey Galladay, my question. Hey, Steve, do you plan on doing any debates with anti-feminists on your channel in the future? Nope. I also do not plan to debate whether or not the earth is flat. Kaboom, splat, yuck, too. How did you meet your wife? Well, we actually went to high school together. She was a few years behind me, and we knew each other a little bit in high school. And then we reconnected a few years later when she briefly dated a friend of mine. And then we connected about a year after that. We just ran into each other in a grocery store. And it was love at, I don't know, third or fourth sight. And we've been together ever since. That's how I met my wife. Oh, I'm sorry. I meant she kidnapped me and castrated me, and she's been holding me prisoner ever since. She's taken away my autonomy, my masculinity. That's how we met, actually. That's the true story, apparently. Radical Bacon, fuck, marry, kill. Ayn Rand, Ann Coulter, and Landers. Jesus. Oh. Okay, God, fuck Ann Rand, marry Ann Landers, kill Ann Coulter. Yeah, that's got to be it. Joe McClory, I keep seeing some of the Steve Shives Destroyed videos on my recommended bar, and it's got me to wonder, have you noticed an effect, positive or negative, on your number of subscribers, views, following, and other social media and Patreon support that could be correlated to when those views started coming out? Yeah, there's been some. There have been dips and spikes that I think are probably correlated to those videos. Whenever some anti-SJW rape apologist dipshit makes a video about one of my videos, usually the views on that video go up. And of course the shitty comments skyrocket, but I screen all my comments now so they never make it to the actual comment page where anyone else can see them. Dr. Babylon, Steve, how would you handle a conversation, debate with a feminist or just a politically active woman who disagreed with you on a woman's issue? I mean, it would depend on the issue. And it would depend on how much I knew about it and how passionate I was about it. But it's very likely that I would simply decline such a conversation or such a debate. It's not to say that I would never do that or I have never done that, but I'm very reticent to do it. I think you have to be very careful about that sort of thing. If you are wanting to be an ally of a particular group, I think you have to be very careful when you are thinking about stepping in and speaking for that group. Sometimes discretion is the better part of valor, you know, and I think when you want to try to be an ally to people, that's a good thing to keep in mind. So it's very likely I would just step back and say, no, I don't want to talk about this, you know, wouldn't be appropriate. That's the last question. That's it for this week. Before I go, I want to do a shout out, as I always do, and the shout out this week goes to one of my very, very favorite people in the whole world. She's someone who I've just come to really, really like and admire, not just for her YouTube stuff, but she's just a really cool person. And the shout out this week goes to Electric Mayhem 87. She is someone who does YouTube videos about, you know, social justice type stuff, racial justice, feminism. She also talks about veganism. She's a vegan herself. And she is just such a cool person and has such insightful, intelligent things to say. She's done videos in the past over the last couple of months talking about the difference between just an honest, reasonable difference of opinion versus being a reactionary shitlord. You know, I don't know if you've ever noticed, but sometimes people on the internet will say incredibly offensive, insulting things to you, and then when you mute them or block them, they say, oh, they blocked me because they can't handle disagreement. Well, Electric Mayhem 87 did a really excellent video just recently where she describes, or she demonstrates, the difference between just a difference of opinion, a disagreement, and being a huge bigoted asshole, and why they're not exactly the same thing. She's just really cool and a really nice person to get to know and to listen to. And I recommend her videos very much. And I think that you should go check out her channel, Electric Mayhem 87. That's the shout out. I also want to tell you, as I always do at this time of the video, that you should be checking out the Lemme Listen podcast. This is a whole family of excellent podcasts produced and mostly hosted by my very good friend, Jason Harding, a.k.a. Jason with a D. There is Let Me Finish, the original, hosted by Jason and Finite Atticus. There is American Monsters and How to Destroy Them, the hilarious improv comedy podcast. There is Filmtastic Voyage, which is hosted by Mike and Alex. There is Cinetific, which is hosted by Professor Jason and Professor Aaron, and that's the show where they look at the scientific validity of popular films. And last, but certainly not least, there is Late Seating, which is co-hosted by Jason and me. And I mention it last because it's the one that I'm on, therefore it's my favorite. And this week, this very day, you can listen to a brand new episode of Late Seating where Jason and I take on the film that may be responsible more than any other movie for the career and success of Michael Bay. Armageddon. Bruce Willis, Ben Affleck, Billy Bob Thornton, Liv Tyler, who apparently thought she was in a shampoo commercial. You can listen to our review of Armageddon by going to LemmeListenPodcast.com. You can listen to our most recent episode of Late Seating, all of the past episodes of Late Seating, all of the episodes of all of the other Lemme Listen podcasts by going to that website right now. Check it out. You won't be sorry if you haven't added the Lemme Listen family of podcasts, and particularly Late Seating, to your what do I want to say? To your to your rotation of podcasts, then you're making a big mistake. Thanks for watching, everybody. I am out of here. Please leave a comment on this video asking me your question for next time. You can ask me anything about anything. Nothing is too serious. Nothing is too silly. I will answer as many of your questions as I possibly can in the next video. So until then, take care, everybody. Hey folks, one more thing before I go. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe. And also please consider helping me to make more videos like this by supporting this channel through Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/Steve Shives to become a patron. Thanks again so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.